World War II was one of the darkest moments in the history of Europe. It consisted of two groups, the Allied powers, which included US, USSR, and Great Britain, versus the Axis powers, which was Germany, Japan, and Italy. World War II started from 1934 to 1945, all due to the Great Depression of 1920. Germany fell to their knees in need of a great leader. Hitler, who was looked upon, rose to the power, becoming the dictator of Germany, leading the Nazi army and pushing Germany through the Depression, but also brought war, blood, and massacre to his own people and many others around the world.
World War II consisted of many goals, but one of the main goals was the invasion of Poland by the German army. Hitler claimed that the massive invasion was a defensive action. To Hitler, the conquest of Poland would bring expansion for German citizens. Britain and France allowed totalitarianism to Germany as long as he didn't invade any more territory. Soon after the invasion of Poland, Britain and France were outraged with Germany, and so World War II was declared. When Poland was completely invaded, Hitler signed a non-aggression pact with Stalin, the dictator of the USSR, to ensure that they wouldn't stop the Nazis from invading. Poland was then split in half between Germany and Russia.
Another main goal was the invasion of Italy by the Allies. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. President F.D. Roosevelt declared war on Germany. When the U.S. finally entered World War II, they teamed up with Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain, to invade Italy to stop Germany from expanding and taking over more territories. They succeeded and stopped the German troops after 38 days of fighting. This also not only stopped German troops from invading, but also pulled U.S. out of the Depression by manufacturing more materials and giving more job opportunities for many Americans.
Lasting from June 1944 to August 1944, the Normandy invasion, also known as D-Day, resulted in the Allied liberation of Western Europe from Nazi Germany's control. On June 6, 1944, 156,000 American, British, and Canadian forces landed on 5 beaches along a 50-mile stretch of the heavily fortified coast of France's Normandy region. The Normandy invasion was one of the largest military assaults in history, and being under Eisenhower's direction, was also the largest naval invasion in history and helped bring an end to the war. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the supreme commander of the Allies who gave the go-ahead for the massive invasion of Europe. In December 1944, the Germans launched the last major offensive of the war, Operation Mist, also known as the Ardennes Offensive and the Battle of the Bulge, an attempt to push the Allied front line west from northern France to northwestern Belgium. As the Germans drove deeper into the Ardennes, the Allied line took on the appearance of a large bulge, giving it the battle its name. A crucial German shortage of fuel and the gallantry of American troops fighting the forests of the Ardennes proved fatal to Hitler's ambition to get at least a draw with the Allies in the West. The Battle of the Bulge was the costliest action ever fought by the U.S. Army, which suffered over 100,000 deaths.
The Battle of Stalingrad. The battle began when the German Air Force bombed the Volga River and the city of Stalingrad. They bombed Stalingrad to try to reduce the city's rubble. The Germans then moved into Stalingrad, taking over most of the city. The Soviets, however, started hiding all over the city, in buildings and even in sewers, to attack the German soldiers to get their city back. In November, the Soviets gathered and made a counterattack where they trapped the Germans inside Stalingrad. Soon the Germans began to run out of supplies, food, and energy. Many of the Nazi soldiers surrendered along with their general Paulus, who later spoke out against the Nazis while in Soviet captivity. Both sides had a large army of over 1 million soldiers, and an estimate of 750,000 soldiers died from the German army, and nearly 500,000 Russian soldiers died. The Battle of Berlin was the major battle in Europe during World War II. The result of the war was the surrender of the German army and the end of Adolf Hitler's rule. The battle began on April 1945 and lasted until May 1945. The battle was primarily fought between the German army and the Soviet army. The Soviet army had over 2,500,000 soldiers, 7,500 aircrafts, and 6,250 tanks. The German had around 1 million soldiers, 2,200 aircrafts, and 1,500 tanks. The Soviet army vastly outnumbered the Germans. Many of the German soldiers, however, were sick, wounded, or starving. Desperate for soldiers, the Germans started including young boys and old men. By April 30th, the Soviets were approaching the center of the city, and the Germans were running out of supplies. Hitler accepted his defeat and committed suicide along with his new wife, Eva Braun. World War II overall left a huge impact on European lives and its history. It destroyed many territories and ended many European and American lives.
However, it brought many nations together in need of help and rescue. The importance of European theater is to keep history from repeating itself.
World War II not only brought destruction and death, but also helped America struggle out of the Depression.
It brought balance of power in the world. It also increased people's knowledge and think about the choices that they make.
Our lives are fashioned by our choices. First we make our choices, then our choices make us.